All right, hey everybody, Jeffrey Powers here, and welcome to another HP TechCast. I'm here with my co-host Calvin Zito and a panel of many bloggers around the world. We are going to be talking about Microsoft's new server that just came out. They announced it today in Server 2012. So let's take a look and say hi to everybody here, and then we'll get right into that. First of all, Calvin Zito, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. Jeffrey, good to see you after spending a little bit of time with you last week at World. Excuse me.
Yeah, we had fun in California. It was a great time, and we got a lot of so, silent but deadly is Mr. John Obeto on my other side here. He's having some audio issues right now, so we'll just say hi this way. On the bottom left.
Hey Jeffrey, I actually put him on mute because that noise is coming from him. So John, you need to get some headphones so that your sound isn't coming through your microphone.
All right, on the bottom here we have Jason Lopez. How you doing, Jason?
Doing well. How about yourself, Jeffrey?
Doing pretty good, thank you very much. And then all the way across the pond, Mr. Hans Vredevoort. I just muddled that one. Sorry about that.
You're doing well. Okay. Just say Hans.
Well done, Jeff.
So we're talking. Basically, we're going to be talking about Microsoft. Thank you. Basically, we're talking about Windows Server 2012. Of course, Microsoft did the soft launch at 8 o'clock Pacific time this morning on September 4th. We're in September already. And they basically had a link up at www.windows-server-launch.com, which has been barely crawling in the last hour or two. I think I got through the first video after redoing it 5 times. And I'm on the second video, and I'm just not even there on all the videos on this virtual keynote. But not great for what they're trying to promote. But it is what it is, I suppose. So, but yeah,
hey, were any of you other guys?
There's been a lot of people.
Were any of you other guys able to get into the launch event and watch it, or did you even try?
Yes, I saw the keynotes. But when I went into one of the technical sessions, it broke on me as well. I figured out one Yeah, go ahead.
I saw one of the keynotes, and then just like Hans, I was trying to watch some stuff on Hyper-V, and my session got cut out, so I have to check in tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah. They're also playing some sort of game while they're doing it. I've got like 2,500 points for the launch game, and I guess they're just grabbing community points out of that. So, but anyway, there's been a lot of people that have already deployed. A lot of companies that have already deployed the Server 2012, so we're gonna try and see what's new in Server 2012, with the features that you guys are really excited about. And go from there. Basically, they've been touting the event as built from the cloud up, which is basically this is the Cloud OS. So we're going to start with that. And what do you guys think? Is this the Cloud OS server that we've been waiting for the last 4 years?
Well, depends on whether you've been waiting for cloud at all, but Microsoft has put everything in it to make it a really cloud operating system. I can give you a few examples, but one thing that is very noticeable, for instance, is that the idea is that you can install a very uniform infrastructure of, let's say, dozens of cluster nodes all in one physical address space, and have all your customers separated in virtualized networks, keeping them really nicely separated.
I think one of the awesome things with the 2012 platform is, everybody talks about this cloud thing, but it's the ability. It's going to give customers and IT professionals like us to really scale out or scale up our environments in a couple of clicks, and really we're enabling ourselves to do a lot of self-healing or be a lot more proactive as opposed to reactive in our day-to-day processes or exponential growth.
Hey, Jason, I asked you to be on the show because we just met several weeks ago at Nth Generation Symposium, and I know your focus is around Microsoft deployment. So you have a lot of experience in this. You actually did a session at Nth Generation Symposium focused on Server 2012. For you, I mean, what do you see as really the top features that are coming out of it that are going to help customers with the issues you're having to deal with customers with in Southern California?
So that's actually a really loaded question, because we can actually break down everything from Active Directory, so many changes in AD itself, from AD GUI to the ability to be able to virtualize a domain controller and it be actually supported, right? Then we can get into networking like Hans was talking about, where we can have multi-tenant virtual machines running the same address space in one physical box coming out of one physical network. And then we talk about the changes to IIS and the changes to storage and just the changes to management and whatnot. But the real big thing here is I see virtualization. And in the 08 R2 days, we did see a little bit of a Hyper-V adoption rate for smaller, not as critical or crucial components. But now I think with Server 2012 and Hyper-V, I mean, I've been testing it myself in my lab, and right now I'm actually rebuilding it to put the final, final touches or the final OS on them. And I tell you, Hyper-V has come a long way. I mean, we look at Hyper-V Replica, things like, I call it a very, very thumbed-down version of Site Recovery Manager, and that's the ability to replicate virtual machines from one host to the other without needing a third-party software. Now, granted, it's out of the box, but you still have your challenges of managing it and from a central location and keeping it up to date, etc. But like I said, I think virtualization is going to be a big push around here. And we look at clustering and all the features that it comes with, clusterware updating, the ability to do active clusters with SQL or application intensive applications. So.
And Hans, I know you have a lot of expertise here as well. You're actually a Microsoft MVP. I mean, the thing that I keep wondering, and is a question that I think will remain to be answered, but I want your input on this anyway, is will this new release help Microsoft put a dent in the virtualization space that VMware has been able to effectively capture that market? I think maybe 75% of the market today is VMware. Do you think this is going to help Microsoft make a dent in that?
Absolutely. Hyper-V has been in the realm of the smaller companies up till now, because the large enterprises were already fully or partly virtualized on VMware. And especially with this version of Hyper-V, in some ways we've even exceeded VMware. And it's more like a cat and mouse game now. Microsoft has some new features. VMware announces 5.1, trying to even come equal with Microsoft's last capabilities. And today I learned from one of the talks that they even doubled the amount of virtual machines in a cluster, which is 1,000 now. It was mentioned that there would be 4,000 in one cluster. And today I heard they upped it to 8,000 in one single cluster. So I think the competition is good, and the quality and scalability and flexibility is so big now that we can really make a fist against VMware.
Iron sharpens iron. That's kind of the way I look at it.
That's helpful. Competition is good. It improves quality, keeps you sharp. Even prices from VMware coming down now, so everybody, the consumer is helped by this.
Do you think having it all in one box is a good idea, or having that third party come in to take care of things is actually better?
What do you mean by one box?
Well, having Microsoft control everything about it.
Okay, you mean everything on one platform? Not necessarily. There could be a situation where you would mix hypervisors, like we can do with the Virtual Machine Manager 2012. We support all three hypervisors, and it doesn't really matter where you place your virtual machines. I think it's not a matter of the hypervisor anymore. It's more about management, scalability of your platform, ease of the deployment, applications. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I also believe it has to do a lot with the workloads.
How so?
Well, I mean, you think about why are you virtualizing, right? You start with that, and then you figure out, okay, does it make sense to virtualize my, business critical application on a VMware or on a Microsoft? So all-in-one solution is great from a budget, but I really believe that we're going to see a lot of mixed hypervisor environments, including Citrix. I mean, so that, and like Hans was saying, with the Virtual Machine Manager, you can manage them from one location.
Well, up to now there were quite a few workloads which were not easy to virtualize because of the scale required. But that is going to change with 2012. Server 2012 more or less allows any business application to be virtualized. There's no reason not to anymore.
Well, let's kind of take it in a slightly different direction. Along with the virtualization, they've been once again they've been touting the word cloud and private cloud and public cloud. What type of features have you guys been seeing in their cloud options that could revolutionize or maybe set us back a little?
So I know that there's a flavor of Windows Server 2012 called Essentials, and that's really meant for the true small business, maximum of 25 users connecting, etc. And that, from what I've read, and I don't have any really hands-on experience with it because I haven't tested it. It's still actually in release candidate. It's not officially been released yet, but that actually is supposed to tie into the Microsoft Cloud, aka Azure, Office 365, Intune, etc. And that's supposed to be ready for that. I think that it's good, but I think it's also not good because SMB still can't support multiple connections out to, or two different ISPs to keep them up and running. So there's a flip side to it. Now, as far as taking it backwards, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. It's a good question, though.
So I know there's a document that Microsoft has released. I don't know if you guys saw it getting tweeted around. I tweeted it last night. And in that document, it talks about one of the things that's important to enable a cloud is what they call Hyper-V extensible switch in Windows Server 2012.
That's interesting.
Hans or Jason, what do you make of that? Why would that enable deploying a secure cloud environment?
Well, at the moment, with the previous versions of Windows and Hyper-V, we would have a very limited virtual switch, and network admins were not able to see into the virtualized networking environment. With the extensible switch, it is, for instance, possible to add extensions without replacing the basics of the virtual switch. An example is like in VMware you have the Cisco Nexus 1000V, which is an extension of your physical network into your virtual environment. Well, that is now being introduced in Server 2012. The extensible switch not only does the routing part, but also forwarding part, but also different various other things like virtual firewalls and monitoring additions. And one particular part of the extensible switch, which I like very much, is the ability to create a converged fabric by virtually adding additional network adapters which are visible to the parent partition. Like, I'll give you an example. When you have a blade server with 2 times 10 gig, you now would need a virtual connect to split it up in multiple channels. With the extensible switch, you're able to create additional NICs which are visible to the OS on a hypervisor level, and you would be able to create individual NICs for live migration, for cluster, for live migration, etc. And that's a very flexible model, which is also used for network virtualization. So there's a lot to the extensible switch. It's very, very interesting material.
Hey, Jason, one I want to throw at you. I remember probably like a year and a half ago getting a demo from an HP R&D guy, a guy that works in my lab who does a lot of the integration work that happens both within VMware and within Hyper-V. And he had given me a demo that he had showing live migration. And I think the point that he really made with me was that with Microsoft Hyper-V, you can migrate VMs back and forth and do that while the VM is still active. Whereas at the time, VMware, when you failed over a VM to bring it back, I think there was downtime required. It sounds like there's some new improvements in Hyper-V live migration. Do you understand those, and can you fill in some gaps there for me of what's new with live migration with this release?
So Hyper-V now can do the things that VMware's been doing with live storage migration and live migrations, or sorry, in vMotions, etc., or storage migration. So what happens is now with Hyper-V, back in 08R2, we were limited to 1 migration at a time. Now there is no hard limit. Your limit is actually the amount of processing and resources and network and all that per box. So realistically, what that means is that we can move 120 plus VMs over to a different host if we wanted to. In fact, on one of I had the pleasure of watching a little bit of the keynote today in virtualization, and they actually showed a demo. I believe it was Mr. Mark Rasanovich was migrating 120 VMs from one host to the other host through PowerShell and or a migration. Now, with that comes live shared nothing migration. So shared nothing migration essentially means I don't need shared storage anymore. So I can have active VMs inside my local disk, and let's say I wanted to move it to a different hypervisor, I can just migrate it over to that. And that was actually one of my demos at the symposium, is to show that, hey, look, we don't need shared storage to do this. You know, and we can do the same thing with, we can move the entire VM itself, we can move the storage, we can move it on and off of any storage. So, and it's all live. You know, it doesn't skip a beat.
Hey, bringing John in here. John, hopefully we got your sound issues resolved. Why don't you say hello to everybody since we're just bringing you back in? John, can you hear me? Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Sound good now.
Can you hear me? I can hear you. Okay. Oh, okay, great. Sorry about the delays. I had a setup I thought worked. Unfortunately, you know how it is when you use a browser other than Internet Explorer.
No problem here.
It doesn't really work.
Try Windows 8. It's fine.
So, John, I imagine you've been listening.
I know.
Hey, John, I imagine you've been listening. So tell us, I mean, what's your net impression?
Yes, I have.
I know you probably already have Windows Server 2012, or at least an early release candidate now that today's the launch day. I mean, what's your net impression on what you're seeing today?
Oh, vastly better. Vastly better. When you look at all aspects of Windows Server and what Microsoft has done with it, they've just basically re-engineered it. I mean, forget about the UI, which we're all gonna get to using, and I love, you know, going with a graphical user interface. when you look at the subsystems that make up Windows, Microsoft has improved them improved them greatly. Virtualization you're talking about with Jason a couple of seconds ago is a whole lot better. He was talking about live migrations, but believe it or not, you could actually do live migrations over a WAN in the older version of Windows Server R2. Storage subsystems are greatly improved. SMB, I believe it's 3.0. Am I correct? Makes it a whole lot better. They have basic dedupe built into it, and they also have storage spaces, and that totally obviates the need for buying, you know, for buying a dedicated NAS. If you have a box out there that, and you have a license that you can use for it, you can just turn that into a backup device that, you know, that works pretty well for other people on your network. In fact, we have a review coming out hopefully this week, if I'm able to get to it. What we're doing, we've been using the HP ProLine micro server, just populated it with drives, and it works very well. I think overall it's a win. But then again, the Windows Server division has always been very good. I mean, they've always delivered very good products.
Well,
so John, you mentioned
you've got multi-billion-dollar companies that need to use these servers. So you can't have a Windows ME or a Windows Vista faux pas in a server situation. It needs to be done correctly the first time.
Yes. Shades of what happened to United last week, where because of some silly hardware device, right, their yield management systems weren't working and they couldn't populate their, just ground an entire airline to a halt. Something that size.
Yeah.
Hey, so one thing I've read about, at least at a high level, but I'm not sure I quite totally understand it, and I'm hoping maybe other people watching don't understand it. John, you mentioned it, storage spaces. I think that's kind of a feature more targeted at kind of the SMB. Jason, I see you nodding your head a little bit. What do you understand storage spaces, and can you give us paint a high-level picture of what storage spaces are and what's it for?
So I'm still learning about it myself. Maybe John has a little more insight on it, but essentially what we can do is you can put direct attached storage on a server, and it gives you a new management place called storage spaces. And in there you can subscribe, you can provision, add, remove disks to different virtual machines or groups of people, etc. So you can actually oversubscribe disks or take away on the fly. So it comes down to, we start talking about industry terms that will be coming like cluster in a box. So you're going to have 2 boxes, 3 nodes connected with direct attached storage, and those guys are going to be in a cluster, and you're going to be able to provision storage across all those with direct attached storage. John, maybe you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, or Hans?
Yeah, well, you mentioned direct attached storage, but by using the shared SAS capability, you'll be able to create 2 or even 4 node clusters. So for a small company with not so many cluster nodes, or maybe only just for your scale-out file server, this would be a perfect solution. You could put a number of Hyper-V hosts and place the VMs on an SMB3 share, which is a native protocol in the operating system now. And especially the scale-out file server cluster in combination with those storage spaces are very attractive, and both in price and flexibility in functionality. I'm expecting HP to build a couple of cluster in the boxes, I suppose.
Well, I know certainly people have seen have seen that X5000 product, right, John? I know you've seen it, and they've looked at that and said, hey, that's 2 servers, SAS attached storage. Why don't you guys sell that as a little mini SMB, solution? I don't know that we're going to do that, but I think, Hans, the point that you're making is HP certainly could. I, in fact, just this morning talked with Brad Kirby, who is our group manager for Microsoft product partnerships here at HP, and we already do have a reference architecture for a 2-node cluster that's targeting SMB. But it's build it yourself based on a you know, an RA, a reference architecture for people to build that kind of a solution. But hopefully we'll have more about that in the future.
Well, talking about storage, I think the area of the storage array is also very interesting. Like if in the enterprise you have those multi-site replicated clusters with continuous access. In the past with Hyper-V you were only able to do that with ordinary shared disks and not with the cluster shared storage, the CSV. That has changed in Server 2012. The replicated systems are now supported. The features of the array are much better used, like in the case of offloaded data exchange, which is comparable to VAAI in VMware space. So hopefully the current storage arrays come out with new firmware to support the ODX capability. We're actually waiting for that because it improves the copy speed by a factor of 10.
Well, Hans, you're setting me up on that one too. I actually have a video demo that I just put on YouTube today that shows ODX with 3PAR, and it's pretty dang fast. I mean, comparing it, doing a transfer without ODX to another transfer with ODX turned on, it was 10x faster with the 3PAR.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but very similar to people who like to compare. It is very similar to the VAAI functionality with Xcopy. In fact, I suspect it's probably similar technology, probably using an iSCSI Xcopy command to do that transfer.
Good to know is that any copy, whether it is a robocopy, an Xcopy, or any kind of transfer, even the creation of a VHDX, it's transparent in the operating system. So any kind of Win32 protocol using the copy command just places a request to the storage array, and it says, "Hey, do you support ODX? If yes, we'll use it." So it's very transparent.
Hans, in your view, being someone who's well versed in Hyper-V, looking at it from, I guess, a higher level, I don't plumb with it as probably you do. Do you see some sort of I believe it has reached Hyper-V has reached feature parity with VMware in the stuff that matters to most people. What do you think?
Well, most people don't care about 64 procs in a VM or 4 terabyte in a host. They're just not big enough for that. But if it's just ticking off the features and compare it with VMware, there are even, well, some features in VMware are better, others are better in Hyper-V. But that's not the point. It's about ease and usability, and it's all part of the operating system. Now it's very easy to use and very approachable for even not so technically minded people as I am.
No, I mean that's why I said the stuff that matters to people. I mean, ideally in SMB and lower mid market, I don't think I have any client that will be approaching 64 terabytes of active computing data.
But people care about live storage migration
because the money.
Yeah. People care about live storage migration because your VM is no longer confined to a standalone host, a cluster even. You can move between clusters. Another thing which is very interesting for also the smaller, not only smaller, but also for some of the larger companies, is the Hyper-V replica. Hyper-V replica is just a native feature of a virtual machine, and you are capable of replicating it with only a 5-minute delay of your data in another data center, either a hoster or another location. But many larger enterprises, they already have a replicated or a synchronous replication between the two data centers, but they also have maybe tens or hundreds of other locations which also need to be protected. So in those situations, you can use those the Hyper-V replica to replicate those applications and those VMs either back to the head office or the other way around.
Cool, thanks.
So how about one area that we haven't
from a
hit at
hardware
all?
standpoint?
Yeah, go ahead, John. Ask the question.
From a hardware standpoint, how does based on like information you can divulge publicly to us, how does HPC server 2012? I mean, from a storage standpoint, because I know that's your bailiwick. What do you guys see? What features do you see in server 2012 that you look at it and you're like, oh man, we're really gonna clean up here?
Yeah, you know, I'm actually trying to get to the product manager, for example, for the X5000. John, again, you're familiar with it. For you guys that haven't seen it before, I mean, it's basically a nice little enclosure that's kind of based on a blade system form factor. Uses a couple of blades as the controllers, and then has a pull-out drawer that can hold, I think it's 35 drives in it, SAS-connected drives. That today is based on Windows Storage Server 2008 R2. My understanding is that's going to very quickly migrate to Windows Server 2012. I actually need to get to those guys, John, and get a deeper briefing, but I think we've kind of hit some of the things that are pretty cool here with the single file instancing, built-in deduplication. I think there's a bunch of storage features that we're going to take advantage of in that platform, plus there's some value add that HP Storage has. I think we're going to try to come back and do another TechCast in probably about 3 weeks, Jeffrey, or so, and I think on that one we'll try and get some HP experts who can talk a little bit more about specific storage integration and where else we're integrating with what Microsoft announced today. But we'll hopefully come back and have a lot more details there in maybe about 3 weeks or so.
Calvin, you referred to the storage server in 2008 R2. The iSCSI target software is now a standard role in Server 2012, so it's very easy to use that part. So it shouldn't be all that difficult to transfer that to Server 2012.
Yeah, and I don't understand how they did all this. I actually know the program manager for Windows Storage Server 2008 R2, and my understanding, Hans, you can correct me, I think they basically rolled everything that was in Storage Server into Windows Server 2012. So now there's no longer a differentiation of having Windows Storage Server or running server. It's all one product.
It's not a separate product anymore. It's just included.
Yep.
Let's
That's why we decide to run our tests on the RTM with it.
Well, I was going to say let's switch some gears here. Let's talk about a little bit more on the internals of the server 2012 and all that has to start to offer. Like for instance, the basic installation, the fact that you could actually repurpose the server to a different use within minutes, as opposed to rebuilding a whole server. A little bit about the IPv6 versus IPv4. And the whole Active Directory. Is there anybody that can kind of give us some insight into that?
I could say something about the use of Windows Core or the full GUI. In the past, the best practice was always to install Hyper-V in a core installation of Windows. But that was rather difficult for many smaller companies who didn't understand PowerShell or any of the scripting languages. So now it's possible to start installation and configuration in the full GUI, and then issue a PowerShell command to convert it to a core installation and back. So that's a handy feature as far as deployment is concerned. And the most rapid deployment method, I still think, is the boot from VHD method, in which you just convert the ISO from the operating system into a VHD, give a command to let it boot from the VHD, and you're done. I wrote a couple of blogs on that.
So have you
So
tried
I could talk a little bit about Active Directory.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Well, with AD, we have things like Active Directory Recycle Bin, and that was actually enabled back in 2008 R2 days. However, it wasn't a GUI based. It was very it was very command line based and wasn't really organized. So now, if you upgrade your Active Directory domain levels and forest functional levels to 2012, you can get a GUI version of the AD recycle bin. So, in other words, if you delete an Active Directory object, an OU, a contact, a user, etc., a group, you can go in there and say, hey, recover. So that's nice. And then the bigger thing and the nicer thing about AD is the fact that now we can actually deploy and snapshot and clone virtual domain controllers. So what the Active Directory team did is they put this VM generation ID. So now you don't have any problems with what's the word I'm looking for? Orphaned objects. So now it says, hey, I was snapshotted. My generation ID is 1, 2, 3, 4. Who's the latest with the generation ID? And then they talk and communicate and say, hey, well, you were a snapshot. You need to get caught up. So in a nutshell, that's a great feature, because now we can deploy domain controllers in a pinch. The other thing I was reading is that they made a lot of changes to the way we can deploy DCs. So there's no more DC promo. It's all done through the Active Directory, and forgive me, I don't remember the acronym, but it's a Administrative Console, ADAC, that's right. And what happens is in there, you can deploy your DCs, you can actually export the config for that, you can deploy it all through PowerShell as well, since that's what it's built off of.
You can easily clone them now.
Yep.
And previously in a cluster, we always needed a physical domain controller outside the cluster to kickstart the cluster. And that was quite a disadvantage. And now, as soon as you've created the cluster is no longer dependent on the domain controller. So you can virtualize your domain controllers more easily without having a physical domain controller outside your cluster.
Looks like they've also made a lot of changes. Oh, sorry about that. They've also made you mentioned, Hans, you mentioned clustering. They've made a lot of changes to the clustering as well. I mean, what do you guys understand of that, and how important is that for customers that are looking at deploying either Hyper-V or just Server 2012?
Well, probably the biggest change has gone into the cluster shared volumes, which is now version 2. It's a total rewrite. Back in the previous versions, they wrote CSV to have something equivalent to VMFS. In the past, we could only have one virtual machine per shared disk and have it fail over to another node. Then in, I think it was R2, we had cluster shared volumes, but that was quite limited. And the biggest problems we had were in backup situations where the cluster shared volumes would go into redirected access mode. And that would cause lots of performance degradation and also problems during backups. And the backup problem has now totally been resolved. The file system has been changed, can coexist with all kinds of different applications using filter drivers. Even one of the reasons why the HP continuous access couldn't run on cluster shared volumes was because of that filter driver. And that has been changed so we can easily use that. Also backup products will take advantage, antivirus products, etc., replication products. So the CSV is the single most changed part of the cluster, and then many smaller things which are very easy to use, like giving certain VMs preference. You have a high priority, medium, low priority, and a no start priority. So that sometimes you need to start one VM before the other. So that's one of the other improvements in the cluster.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about is dynamic access control. And what the Active Directory team, what they did is this feature allows for claims-based access. So in other words, you can specify rules and different groups and files to allow for different types of control for file shares, etc. So, you know, we look at how do you manage file shares. Normally you'd create different groups, and in those groups, say we'd have sales, and sales would have access to that sales folder. But now we can get a little more complex and create like what I would like to call access control lists, and they can get a lot smarter for access. So if somebody's in sales or marketing and crosses over to a little bit of you know, development, you can plug in all those features and contents and make it easier for resources and make it easier for people to access these restricted files or folders. Dynamic access control, when I was at TechEd, it's a very complicated beast as I saw it. So there's a lot of a learning curve for that. So I don't see the adoption rate happening quick. I think once people understand it, they'll start to use it more. One more significant change to Active Directory is... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's okay. It's part of that. What's it? The resilient file system, or REFS? I think that's what they're calling it.
Yeah, refs. So yeah, refs is actually a great file system change. We needed something better than NTFS. But one last thing is that in AD you actually have something called activation services. So let's say, for example, you deploy a VDI environment, and what it'll do is it'll automatically activate those keys for you. And as soon as those clients are no longer on the domain, it'll deactivate them. So you don't have to call up Microsoft and say, hey, look, these things are deactivated, you know, release the key so I can continue to build VMs.
I haven't looked at REFS all that much yet, and the idea I get is that Microsoft is introducing a new file system, not meant for production. It's more like, well, hey, try it out, see if your applications are compatible with it. And it might be the standard in the next version, but for now, it's more like, well, try it out and see what it can do for you.
I know on a high level.
If it was like that, why do they put so much behind it?
Well, not everything is compatible with REFS. That's the point, you see. So they put it in both, and they have to. It takes some time before we know everything can work with it.
Okay.
But it's a hugely scalable file system. For instance, cluster shared volumes does not support REFS. So we can't use it in a cluster for now. And there are many other things which don't work in combination with REFS yet. It takes a bit of time.
So in other words, if you by server 2016, we'll have enough refs deployed, possibly, that this could become a part of the infrastructure.
Yeah, there might be a couple of applications which REFS can be put to good use for, but no, I see it as an experiment.
Okay.
Maybe R2. What I want to ask is, Jason and Hans, have you guys done any work with either direct access or branch office in 2012? We haven't done a lot. We use branch office and direct access in R2. And I love it because, you know, I don't have to go through the rigors of creating the VPN whenever I want to talk. But have you guys tried it? And
we have it in our office and we implement it with customers, but I'm not the expert on that subject, so I can't say much about that. But it's cool stuff.
So I've deployed direct access in, you know, the TMG and UAG, and it was very, very complicated and challenging nonetheless. But when you did get it to work and you work through those challenges, it's actually a great VPN alternative. I'm very excited to dive into the new 2012 direct access. We actually want to deploy it internally here, as well as the branch cache. So that's something that my hands are going to be touching in the very, very near future. Going back to the refs, one of the things I liked about the REFS file system is that it check disks. They can be done online, and you don't have to take a disk offline to repair it, and it does it in a very, very quick time frame. But as everybody mentioned, most applications don't support it. You can't put Exchange on it, or Link, or SQL, or anything else like that.
Jason, the ultra-fast repair is also available in TFS. So even in a cluster, you never have any downtime because the errors are first spotted, and in the second pass it is going to be repaired. And in a cluster, you can use redirected I/O to still use the disk from another cluster node. So it's not a unique feature of REFS.
Come back to storage. One of the things I guess I failed to say was that the thing provisioning what's it called, option in storage spaces is really quite cool. Sort of reminds me of the claim to fame of the Drobo boxes I had back in the day. So right now you can have a system that does that right out the box. You don't have to be able to think provision for your users right out the box, right out the bat in Server 2012.
Yeah, I like the storage spaces as well. I did a presentation in San Diego early this year for the experts conference, and that was focused on the storage part of Server 2012, creating VHDXs, 64 terabyte VHDXs, using them for a cluster space, and then serving them out to another machine or maybe a file server cluster, and doing all sorts of storage live migration, all in PowerShell 3.0. That's something we forgot to mention, that PowerShell is all over the place. There are about 2,400 new commandlets, and especially Hyper-V. I love the Hyper-V PowerShell commandlets. It's so easy to configure virtual machines, but also the storage and the networking part of the operating system. If you
I hope.
Yeah, if you sorry,
hope somebody comes.
Go ahead.
Somebody comes up with a GUI for the 2,400 new commands. I mean,
There is.
that's a bunch of
Yeah,
commands.
maybe you don't know, but if you don't just start the PowerShell window, but you start the integrated scripting environment (ISE), you get exactly that. It has IntelliSense. That means you just begin typing a command like new-vm, and then it proposes all sorts of different arguments. It completes your arguments. It gives you fill-in boxes to know which options there are. In no time, you know how to use those commands. It's very easy to learn.
One of the cool things I learned was the bidirectional, where you can just a single line PowerShell command that can help you convert a VHD to a VHDX and back again, and that's like really cool.
Very strong language.
OS is.
It's a very capable language. It's very, very strong.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, in AD they actually have a show history of PowerShell. So in the Active Directory console, you can go to the top right corner and show history, and then you can just pull down the list of commandlets that were run in the GUI. Very nice.
Yeah. That was shown in one of the keynotes as well with the Virtual Machine Manager 2012 SP1. Any GUI related thing you do is translated into a PowerShell commandlet or a series of commandlets, which you can copy and place in your library and reuse as much as you want to.
Nice.
All right. Well, we're
the one thing that we really haven't talked about.
Go ahead, Jason. Yeah, I think you were going in the right direction.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm in the process of demoing the Microsoft VDI, and I really like where it's going with it. I like the options, the scalability that you have with it. So one of the things, if we look at different types of VDI technologies like Citrix or even VMware View, those are relatively expensive. So that's one of the things I want to do in my lab is deploy a VDI environment and just kind of run some performance and testing on it to see if it can actually be a viable solution for most people. Because when you think about it, for people who are enterprise agreements and or with software assurance, etc., all we have to do is enable it, and then we've got a VDI ready to go. We can deploy it, with a couple of clicks. So I mean, obviously there's more planning than that involved, but in reality, it could be a really, really good option. But it also goes back to one of the things that Jeffrey mentioned earlier was, well, do we want Microsoft as the all-in-one solutions sort of solution system? Any thoughts?
Yes. Yes.
Well, we know your
want
answer, John.
Microsoft as the all-in-one solution.
You have a choice.
There is no choice.
I think
The bug is.
I think choice is always good. I think when you ask that question, Jason, I think of HP and what we're trying to do around convergent infrastructure. If things really do work better together, and you can integrate all of that to work better together, and as long as the vendor you're working with doesn't then come and try and take advantage of you, the fact that you're kind of using everything from their platform, I think having everything under one umbrella is a great thing. As long as everything is at least close to being best in class. Now, it doesn't all have to be the best of everything, but there's advantages to having stuff that works together from one vendor, one throat to choke, better integration that happens. That I think there's really something to be said for looking at a single vendor approach.
I mean, the Microsoft VDI stack does have things now like pooled clones, and if you're running System Center, you can use it to pull some reports and metrics off those boxes. I mean, there's a lot of good, compelling reasons to look at it and to test it, which is one of the reasons why I want to do it, because that's something that we quite possibly might deploy internally.
Yeah, well, maybe when you get to the point that you've done that, maybe we can get somebody, maybe get somebody who's a Citrix expert and a Vue expert, and maybe do a little bit of a compare and contrast of the benefits of each. And I think always being able to get a fair comparison is good for customers to hear about.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna have to wrap this up. We're getting close to the top of the hour here. So and there's so much more that we could go on with this. It's just amazing. So if you guys, we'll do another one if you want to come back, and we'll talk even more about this. But there's one more question that I got to ask all of you, and that is this: do you like the tiles on Server 2012? Jason, let's start with you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still feeling it out. I'm actually trying to move towards the more command line based to avoid the tiles and all that other stuff. I mean, some of it looks pretty, but I'm just more of a simplistic guy. Just one or two clicks. But I don't know. It's still to be determined for me.
Okay.
Well, I could do without it. I could do without it if it was possible. But the architecture of the operating system is such that you cannot get rid of it. Even Windows, the desktop is an app, so it's one of the tiles. So, but I must confess that the first thing I do is Windows key D for desktop, and I put everything on my on the bottom taskbar, as I used to do with Windows 7.
I live in the GUI. I mean, for me, I really don't have the time to start thinking about it. I want stuff out there. I look at when I look at the new start menu. To me, it's a horizontal start menu that's a horizontal scrolling start menu. That's all it is, as opposed to the one we had before, which was a vertical fly out menu. So what this does is essentially the same thing. It's out there. What the problem I have with it is the fact that your customizations don't follow you from server to server or system to system. Apart from that, I want everything exposed. I want to be able to click on that and know that that's what I wanted to do. It's right there. That's what I want to do. I try not to use, personally, I try not to use the command line. I know my staff they love the command line and all that kind of stuff. But to me, it's taking me back 30 years, and I don't want to go there.
And John, are you mentioning or talking about the client or the server? Or the server? Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind. I mean, it's out there. You know, you can expose the apps you want, the tiles you want, whatever, and then you can have it take the other stuff off the screen, so that you just have, like I believe on the server I use right now that I just upgraded today. I just have about 5 or 10 or 10 tiles, and that's it. Those are the ones I need to manage that. And for me, right, it's there, and I can use it right there, as opposed to when I go to the command line and I have to stop and think. I'm not really a PowerShell guru or whatever, and unfortunately I haven't had the time to delve into it since PowerShell. So I just know a few commandlets that work, and I stick to those. And there's some people who would never. My nephew, who's a freshman, ComSci freshman, hates the GUI. He drops down into PowerShell and starts creating. But I'm not that good. No, I want to be.
Well, the one thing that I think is a great idea with the tiles is the fact if you're an administrator and somebody calls you in the middle of the night and you're in some hotel upstate and the Wi-Fi is horrible and you've got to log on to do stuff, the tile system is going to be there. It's going to be easier than when you press that start button, waiting for the start button to pull up, and then you're waiting for your mouse to move around, and then you might miss where you're going because there's just a big latency there. So maybe those tiles will change that. But I've always been, and I learned this from a guy years ago when I was doing support for Solomon Software. He hated the mouse, and he did everything through commands. And I learned all my commands at that point. I learned all my shortcut keys, and I like doing it that way myself. So, I suppose
the moral of the story, Jeffrey. The moral of the story, Jeffrey, would be don't stay upstate. The moral of the story would be don't stay at a hotel upstate if you need to get involved with managing servers someplace. So you need to be uptown or downtown, not upstate.
Don't stay at the Snooty Fox.
Sometimes if you're
I think it comes.
Sometimes if you're working on a remote office and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and the main servers go down, you don't have much choice. Not at all. So, all right. Well, that'll wrap it up for this episode of HP TechCast. My name is Jeffrey Powers. We're gonna go around really quick. We're gonna start with Calvin Zito. Calvin, where can people get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. You can see there's HP Storage Guy if you didn't know that already, and my blog is at hp.com/storage/blog. All right, Jason.
You can find me at JAYLPZ07, soon to be blogging, and maybe do a little guest blog on Hans's hyperv.nu.
And Hans?
My Twitter name is Vredevoort, and if you go to my Twitter page, you'll also find my blog, which is called hyperv.nu. Well, that's where I am. If not working with Hyper-V.
John?
Well, I grace the people of Earth with my presence. I live in Windows World. I'm out here on planet Earth for a little bit. My Twitter handle is at John Obeto, Obeto, and I blog at absolutely.windows.com. We blog about Windows. And Windows.
Wow, that's shocking.
And more Windows.
It is. And of course, my name is Jeffrey Powers. You can find me over at geekazine.com. I'd like to thank everybody for being on this panel. Like I said, we're going to do another one of these because we just touched what's going on with Server 2012. I'd like to find out after we've got it in our systems for about a month or so how it's really working, how virtualization's working, how the cloud's working. We haven't even talked about half of the features of implementing private clouds, implementing virtual structures and stuff like that. And we're going to do that. If you're a blogger and you want to be part of the HP TechCast, feel free to let us know. Of course, Calvin Zito, HP Storage Guy, and then, of course, myself, Geekazine. Think Magazine, take out the mag, put in a geek, and you've got Geekazine. All right, that's it for HP TechCast. My name is Jeffrey Powers. Thanks again for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.